Right, everyone. Just giving everyone a minute to log in, and then we'll start off with the webinar. Okay, just one more minute. The majority of participants have logged in. Just giving them a couple more minutes to log in. It looks like the majority of participants have joined, so let's kick this off. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar series where we introduce the new Beneficiary Ownership Register. My name is George Outerbridge, for those who don't know, and I'm the manager of the corporate authorization section here at the Registrar of Companies. So we'll be responsible for beneficiary ownership and the entire incorporation process once we do the transfer. So I'll be walking you through this session where we demonstrate how the BO Register is integrated into the existing online companies and partnership register. We'll begin with a short presentation highlighting key updates, followed by a live demo showing how to register a company limited by shares. So as we go along, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. We're going to try to limit these questions mainly around the uses of the system and new things that are going on with the system. The team at the Registrar of Companies is currently putting the final touches on the regulations and the guidance notes, and those will be issued out shortly, which will give out more explanation on satisfying the requirements of the Act. So members of the ROC team are on hand to answer your questions that you post up as we go through, and then we'll take some time towards the end of the session to answer as many as possible. Any ones that we don't get to within this session, we'll carry over to the to session 2 once we go along. So let's side up. Let's see. So the first point is the transfer of the central register from the BMA to the Registrar of Companies. We are migrating over the data from the BMA's existing register, but there are some differences with how the data is structured, and we will require CSPs and entities to come in and basically fill in the gaps. This will be the same as when we did the update profile service for the initial launch of the entire register. So as we go along, the last applications for the BMA should be submitted no later than 5 p.m. on October 28th on the Tuesday, sorry. And this is to allow the BMA to complete any outstanding applications for new registrations, also with changes of beneficiary ownership. And that's the reason why we gave them a couple of days to do that is we have to make sure we have the data all in the right format and converted over, ready to move, as well as once the new regime comes into effect, exchange control will go away. So it gets repealed. So there will no longer be requirements to get permission for the issuance of shares or transfers. That is being replaced with an approval of the beneficiary owner. And to clarify that up, that means that when somebody is becoming a beneficial owner in Bermuda for the first time, there will be an approval process for that through the Registrar of Companies. And then after that, that person can then be added to any other beneficial owners, any other entities as a beneficial owner without the requirements to get further approvals. All right. So and as of November 3rd, all new registrations will come to us. So there will be a one-stop shop for all new incorporations. As we go through this presentation, I'll show you how that is integrated within the current capital register and show you how to proceed as of November 3rd. So another change that's come into effect is that in order to file new registrations, as well as changes to beneficiary ownership information, that will be required to be filed by a CSP as of November the 3rd. And this applies to all entities except for local entities that do not have a 114B license. So that is local entities that fall under the 60/40 rule. But the exemptions from the CSP Act do apply. So that is any exemptions for entities that manage their own group, etc. I see that some people are getting echoes. So I don't see one on my side. So if you're receiving an echo, it's probably somebody else within your office is also signed into the webinar. So it's probably just a double feedback loop. So it's best to make sure you mute yourselves and mute everybody within the all of the participants on our side are muted. So you shouldn't be getting any echoes back. Okay, to the next one. So along with this, there are other system changes that we have done to add additional security around the beneficiary ownership side of the register. So there is a new authority model that we have put in place for beneficiary ownership that's separate and apart from the existing authority that you have to manage an entity. We'll go further into the authority in the second webinar. But then also, we are also initiating multi-factor authentication. So that is currently live within the system. And I'll show you how you can pre-register your multi-factor authenticator today. And if you can choose to sign up for it today or at any point in time leading up to November 3rd. But once you log in on November the 3rd, then it will be mandatory. You will not be able to proceed without registering a multi-factor authentication. And for the last point on here, we've received and considered industry feedback about the digital constitutional documents. So that will be like the Memorandum of Association for companies, the Certificate of Formation for LLCs, and the Certificates of Particulars for partnerships. So, and as a result of the feedback we've gotten on those, we've introduced a small but important change to the filing process. So starting November 3rd, all constitutional documents for new registrations will be submitted in PDF format. Now, I want to take this opportunity to reassure everyone that if your entity is already registered with the digital constitutional documents, that document will remain valid, so you don't need to refile anything. But entities have the option of replacing it with a PDF, with the PDF version. And then going forward, any alterations to those documents or updates, they will have to be submitted. They have to be submitted as a PDF version to replace the digital one. Okay, so next, we will begin the demo by registering 2 exempted companies limited by shares. To not take up too much time with this, I pre-populated the entities for the most part, and we'll be focusing on the beneficial ownership component within the new services. But before we jump in, there's a few important concepts to take into consideration when filing via the new system. The first one is that our new system relies on relationships and unique identifiers for each relevant legal entity and each beneficial owner. So as I go through, I'm going to refer to relevant legal entities as RLEs and beneficial owners as BOs. When I say that, the relevant legal entity is any entity within a chain leading up to the Bermuda entity, and the BO will be the individuals. So the second concept is where there is a chain of RLEs between the Bermuda entity and the BO, you will need to start by creating the last RLE before the BO. So see on this side, you'll create the one that exists just before the beneficial owner, and then work backwards towards the Bermuda entity. And then when a chain is completed, so when you have completed all of the information for that chain, any link within that chain, so any RLE, can be used to add the chain to a Bermuda entity or another RLE. And also, once an RLE or BO is created, they can easily be added to any entity without having to enter all of the information again. This greatly simplifies the process when registering large groups or updating BO information for any existing entities. So with that, let's jump into the actual system. Okay, so jumping right in. Of course, everyone's familiar with this page. This is the our current companies in partnership register. Now, when you go into login for the first time on November, you will receive a notice that you will have to register multi-factor authentication. Okay, and once you're in, I'm just going to show you quickly how you can register multi-factor authentication now. So if you go up to your name on the top right, you will select Register Multi-Factor Authentication and walk you through the page. And at the end of that, you can either set up either an authenticator, such as the Microsoft Authenticator, or you can utilize an email address as your authentication method. Now, going in from the org chart that I sent out previously, the first thing you have to do is create the last relevant legal entity just before the beneficial owner. Now, there are a few new options that you have available to you under Register Services. you will select this, you have this option to create a relevant legal entity. Now, just a note, when you're creating a relevant legal entity, you do not need to reserve the name first. So first question you pop in is whether it's a legal entity or a legal arrangement. This one, we're going to put in a legal entity. Now, the form of relevant legal entity description. So that is the type of entity it is in the home jurisdiction. So for instance, Bermuda has limited liability companies. We have companies limited by shares, or we have partnerships. For this one, I'm entering in, it's a corporation. And then you'll put in the entity name. You can add alternative names. That will be if the name is in another script that is not English, or if there's any trading names associated with that entity. Then you would enter the name of the register in which the legal person is formed. So for Bermuda, so for instance, if this was a Bermuda entity, it would be the Bermuda Registrar of Companies register. For this one, and you would enter the registration number on that register. The date of registration, incorporation, or establishment. The country of registration, incorporation, or establishment. And if it's in the United States or if it's in Canada, then it'll also bring up an additional field to allow you to add to select either the state or the province. You select the law by which this person is governed. That usually relates to the same place where it's registered. The address. And then you will provide the evidence of registration, incorporation, or establishment. So this will be the certificate of incorporation or some other document that actually establishes the entity. You would enter the identifier number if it is different than the registration number. If it is not, you do not need to enter anything here, along with the issuing country. And the date of issue. And then you would upload a copy of that document. Now, here's where you can provide any other supporting documents. This will be any documents that support this application. That's what, such as the certified copies of the org charts, or anything like that. This is not required. This was just any additional documents you can put in, and then you can also add multiple documents. And then the next step would be to add the beneficial owner to this entity. You have an exemption. You have the option to put in to apply for the exemption at this stage. I'll go through this. We'll go through this at a later stage, though. We want to concentrate on actually populating up the org chart. So for this, we are going to add an individual. Now, in order for our system to work properly, we have a one of one. So each beneficial owner and each relevant legal entity has its own profile and unique identifier on our system. So the first thing you have to do is to locate the individual on our system if they exist. And in order to do this, you have to put the name in exactly as indicated in valid government identification. So first name, middle name, last name. If they do not have a middle name, then you do not have to put it in. But if they do have a middle name, and that's what provided on, say, their passport or driver's license, then you would have to put that in. So for this one, I'm going to show how to add an existing record to our system, to this record. And you would have to do the exact date of birth as well as the exact name. And you perform a search. And once the record comes up, if this does match the information you've been provided, then you can select it. If not, you can create a new registrable person. I'll go through that stage once we actually get to the entity. Now, you would have to also provide us with the statement of nature of interest. So this is how this beneficial owner is related to the relevant legal entity. So in this case, we're going to select shareholdings. Oh, and also this list will be provided out to the industry, so you know exactly what all of the different types of nature of interest you can select. So I'm going to select shareholdings. If there's any additional details relating to this, you can add it in here. So there are multiple different options, especially with shareholdings, where you can either do nominees or joint ownerships. We will go through this in more detail in the third webinar. And you would have to enter the percentage owned or controlled. Now remember, this is building out the link. So this is the percentage owned or controlled for the relevant legal entity that we created in step 1. And then you'll put the interest start date. And then you would have to upload the evidence of the shareholding. So this is the documentation that verifies that this nature of interest exists between the entities. So normally for shareholdings, this can be done through either a certified copy of the organizational structure, or additionally, it can be done through a certified copy of the share register. You can add multiple interests, but I'm just going to add one in this case. And then you would have to make this declaration at the end before submitting. And this basically declares that, to the best of your knowledge, the beneficial ownership information that's filed with the registrar is adequate, accurate, and up to date as of the time to which this submission relates. And also confirm that you are authorized to make this submission on behalf of the reporting entity. So once you get to this stage, you'll be able to review all of the information. As long as you have green ticks, that means everything's in and you can proceed. But you want to make sure that all of the information supported is accurate. And then you can submit that to the Registrar of Companies. Now, when we receive applications, we'll be going through and verifying all of that information that's provided. And then once we hit approve, then you'll get a certain filing back. But in the meantime, you do not have to wait for an application to be approved to add that relevant legal entity onto other applications. And I will go through what I mean, I'll go through what I mean by that. So right now, that application is currently submitted. If you can see, it's currently under the status of review, but I'm going to go into registering a company limited by shares. So normally you'll get to here by going services, register services, and then companies, and then select the type of entity you're looking to create. I've already pre-populated this so that we don't have to do all of that, and so we can focus on the beneficial ownership part. So as I go in, we're going to start with registering a company limited by shares using this exempted demo number 1 limited. So I've already pre-populated everything, but I just want to point out previously at the bottom here, you would have the date of consent, date of the no objection from the BMA as well as the upload. So that has been replaced with the constitutional documents, and as well as any supporting documents that you can put down here. The supporting documents in these will relate to the specific types of entities that are filed. So for instance, for local companies, you'll be able to upload the copy of the advert under the supporting documents. Now, let's take you right over to the beneficial ownership tab. So, like I said, this is where you come in and actually add the beneficial owners to this entity. So the first one, I'm going to add a registrable person. I'm going to add a relevant legal entity, and I'm going to search for the one I just created. So as you can see, it is now available for it is available for selection. So this one has not been approved by the registrar yet. So by approved, I mean it has not been actioned by the registrar. So going through, doing our verification and hitting the approve button. So I do not have to wait until this is done to actually add this to it. This will allow you to build up chains and then submit them all without having to wait for the approval in betweens. Right. So once again, you always have to go with the nature of interest. So I'm keeping this one as shareholdings. The percentage owned or controlled. Interest start date, along with the evidence. And once that's done, so I've added a relevant legal entity. Now I'm going to actually add, I'm going to add an individual as a beneficial owner directly for this entity. So you go in to add a registrable person. As I said, the first thing I'm doing is looking to see if there is already a record for this individual within the register. Okay. Now, if it does not find a record, you can either change your criteria, try again, or use the option below to create a new registrable person. I'm going to select to create a new one, and it brings in the information you populated within the search. So first thing is, does the legal name of this registrable person include a middle name? If you select yes, then a middle name is required. If you select no, then no middle name is required. You can add any previous names or aliases. Do this. And then you can go through and we'll start populating up an individual's records on our register. As I said, the date of birth would bring over from the search you use to first locate this. You would add in any of their nationalities. You can add multiples on here, or one is required. and whether they are a tax resident in one or more countries. And for that, all you would have to select is the country of tax residence. And do they have a tax identification number for this? So that would only be one of the options. So this would only pop up if they are a tax resident in other jurisdictions in one or more countries. You'll put in their residential address. No, you can add the additional contact information, but these are all optional. Then you would add an identification for this individual. Provide the number as well as the issuing country. Now, along with that, you will put out the date of issue and the date of expiration. Along with uploading a PDF of that document. And these documents are used by the registrar of companies in verifying the information that's provided to us. Now, directly under here, you'll see we have a supporting documents. So this is where you can provide any other additional information. And also this is where you will be able to provide the personal declarations forms for each individual. Now, as we transfer over, we will be accepting the same personal declarations that the BMA uses for their prudential regime for shareholder controllers and beneficiary owners. So any of the documents that have already been completed, you'll be able to use those ones going forward. So you would upload the personal declaration. And then we move on to the statement of nature of interest. So this is, as I said, I'm putting in an individual and I'm linking him directly to the Bermuda registered entity. And also providing evidence of that interest. Okay. Let's see, it looks like I missed something. Oh, so again, anytime you're submitting beneficiary ownership information, you just have to make sure you click on the declaration before you proceed. And once you have got all green ticks along here, you can do a final review. And if everything is in order, I'll move you over to the payment screen. Now on here, you will notice all of the fees that we have, the fees that come along with a registration. The one that we are adding is the application for registration fee. This is the fee that would have gone to the BMA previously. So as we bring it over to our side, the fee comes along with it. So once that is done, it's now been submitted, and you can check our work in progress. And that one has now also been sent for review. Now, in the meantime, what we would do I have a second entity already prepared, and what I want to show you guys now is to add in an existing registrable person, and I'm going to look for the one. Okay. Ah, so as you can see, elaborate on how this works. So every entity on our register that is registered in Bermuda is available to be a relevant legal entity for another entity in the chain. So when you come in and you want to add a Bermuda registered entity, the first thing you will do is do the search, and you would search for an existing registrable person. If that Bermuda entity has not been listed as an existing one yet, then you have to create it. So I was just looking for a new one. No results came up for the one I just created. So you have to select the form of legal entity. And you can either add in another another legal entity, relevant legal entity arrangement, or you can select registered entity. And then once you do a registered entity, you can search for it, and you can search by either the registration number or the name. So this was the one I just created, and just want to highlight. So as you can see, you do not have to wait for that to be approved before you can add it to this link. Okay, and then you select the nature of interest. Sentence area controlled. As well as the evidence. Done. Once you select the declaration, you'll be able to proceed on. Go down to the final review. Submit. Okay. Right. So now if I look at my work in progress, all three of those have now been sent to the registrar companies for review. So now while we wait for my colleagues on the other side, they're going to be approving those applications and putting through. While we're going through that, I just wanted to show you a quick way, some quick ways of finding items within our test. So under your items will contain every application you've submitted, well, not every, it will contain all of your relevant legal entities, all your beneficial owners, and all of your reserved names, as well as all entities on our register. You can utilize this filter to actually to identify things, to locate specific records. And if you just use the RE dash, you can see you can isolate all of the relevant legal entities. You can isolate beneficial owners. For companies, you can just do the search by the registration number or name of company. And then also for reserved names, you can also just type it in like that. Okay. Just looking to see once those applications are actually processed, and then we will be able to proceed on. As we're going through just to clarify, we're currently in user acceptance testing. So I think there's a slight little issue that came up with the approvals. Just gonna swap out my accounts, see if I can get that through so I can finalize up the demonstration. Okay. All right. Now switching back over to my external user. Okay, now you'll see all of those have been done, and the entities that I just created are now under my items. Now that I'll go through authority at a later stage, but basically when you create any entity, relevant legal entity, or beneficial owner that you create, you will automatically get authority over those ones. Um, Only persons with authority to manage an entity's records will even see the beneficial ownership tab. If you do not have authority, this tab will not be available. And this shows you exactly the individual that I just registered, as well as the relevant legal entity. So once that has been completed, you'll be able to go into beneficial ownership actions and show beneficial ownership. And it will show the chain and each of the links in between the chains. So just as a demonstration, that's why I went through when I initially started, I created NYC RLE. I added John Doe, who was an existing person on our register. And then I came into the entity, Exempted Demo 1 Limited, and I created Jim Doe. Now looking at the second entity that I registered, you would then be able to go into this and show the visualization, and it shows the link going through. So remember when I came into Exempted Demo number 2, all I did was link it to Exempted Demo number 1, and it has the entire chain going all the way through. Now, just to show you a quick since we have a little bit of extra time, I'm just going to show you one more, adding a beneficial owner to an existing entity, or adding a relevant legal entity, which then adds on the entire chain. So we're going to go into actually maintaining beneficial ownership in the second webinar. But in this one, since we have a little bit extra time, I'm just going to go to maintain beneficial ownership and adding a registrable person. I'm going to add a relevant legal entity. So I'm going to go ahead and add Delaware RLE3. I'm going to indicate the nature of interest. And upload evidence of that interest. Done. Make the declaration. So you've also got our system locks it down. So there's only a certain percentage of beneficial ownership that's available to be done to any entity. So for this entity, in the previous one, I actually did 100% from the last one. So all of this entity's information, all of this entity's shareholding has now been filled. So I would not be able to add any further ones without modifying the shareholdings of any of these two. But as you can see, this one has 100% shareholdings. So it won't let me proceed with adding this one. So I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to go back to exempted demo number 1. Okay. Go to the beneficial ownership. Now, just to verify, this one currently has 40% shareholdings and 30% shareholdings. So that's 70% altogether. I'm going to add in that last 30%. So we're going to add a registrable person, relevant legal entity, search again. And we're going to add RLE3. Set all of this information. This is one that I've already created previously. Selecting the nature of control. And this will be finalizing up the last 30% of 30% of shareholdings outstanding for this one. Okay. Once you select the declaration, you can submit. So for any changes to beneficial ownership, maintenance of beneficial ownership, creation of a beneficial owner, relevant legal entity, or anything like that, there are no other fees. So these ones do not require this. There are no fees currently for any of these filings. So that means that they automatically get submitted for approval. Okay, and I'm just going to wait for a minute for one of my team members to approve the application. Okay. Until that time, you can always track your applications via the work in progress. Also, if you saved an application and came back to it later, like how I did with the two incorporations, you'll be able to pick it up directly from inside of there. And then also you can also transfer, you can pick up applications from that your colleagues have started that your colleagues within the same organization have started and complete them. Let's see. Okay, probably running into the same error. So let me just bear with me for a second. I'm just going to rush back in and approve that one. Actually, it looks like it's going through. So let's go back. Okay, yep, it's out of my work in progress, so that means it's been done. So let's just go back in. So we're going to go back into the entity, view the beneficiary ownership. So as you can see, so now Delaware RLA3 is showing up. And then also within the beneficiary ownership actions. So remember, all I added was RLE3. This chain was already existing, but it pre-populated all of the rest. And as a final view, this will show you this one still as one link directly to exempted demo number 1, that entity I just updated. And as you can see, the ownership chain for this one has been updated as well. So this allows us to make sure that we have the accurate and up-to-date information on every entity's beneficial ownership going the whole way through. And it also makes it easier. So as you saw how simple it was. I did not have to go in and update each of these entities' records because, like I said in the beginning, our system relies on the relationship building to get the adequate, accurate, and up-to-date information into our system. Hey, so with that, so that's the end of the presentation today. Now let's turn our views over to the questions. I'm going to bring on Mr. Anthony King, one of our senior analysts. He's going to come online to help me go through all of the different questions.
Hello, everybody. How's everyone today? I'm going to help George out by answering some of the questions so he doesn't have to read them off and answer at the same time. I'll try and get through as many questions as I can, but I'm going to try and identify the more pertinent ones for the time being. And of course, any other questions could be sent to the ROC Help Desk, and we'll be able to revert back to you in short time. The first question I have for George is data migration. How will the data be treated to address the 10% filing requirement at Integra level to 25% BO regime?
So as we're bringing over the information, basically because of how the data was structured, and it's structured differently in the BMA system than ours. So we're bringing over sorry, let me start all over again. So when we're bringing over the information, we're bringing over every beneficial owner as either indirect or direct control. So that's why I was saying about the update profile service. That's going to be very about updating the beneficial ownership information. That's going to be very important. So when we migrate over the data, we are bringing over each individual or relevant legal entity as either direct or indirect control. So when you first come in, when you first get access to the system, we are also granting authority to the CSPs that had submitted the application to the BMA. So on November the 3rd, when you come in, the CSP that submitted the application, the organization, will have the ability to go inside of there and replace the direct control or indirect controls with the proper nature of interest. So for instance, the shareholdings. Also, you'll be able to remove anybody who will not satisfy a beneficial owner. So you'll be able to update the information going forward from that. We're going to be working with the industry to actually get the register fully accurate, updated, and everything for between now and June. So in the meantime, any additional beneficial ownership requests, we would have um, the full data extract from the BMA, which we'll be able to use to satisfy those requests.
Wonderful. Thank you, George. The next question is, what if the RLE is an existing Bermuda company? Will it also need a profile will it need a profile as an RLE as well as an entity profile?
Yep. So that was that step that I took in. So you first search for an entity that is RLE, relevant legal entity. If it does not show up there, that's when you have the option of selecting a registered entity. And then when you select that registered entity and add it as an RLE for the first time, then it will be available as an RLE for any other registered entity any other registered entity.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that the current demo is for an incorporation of an entity, but will we need to submit the same information for all relevant legal entities when verifying, checking the beneficial ownership information that has been transferred over from the BMA for already incorporated or existing entities?
Yes. So, like I said, when we moved over the data, we moved over the data. It's and because we can only move over the data that was structured in the same way as our system, there will be there will be gaps that you have to fill in once you come in. The other thing is all of any of the uploads. So um, the org charts, any of the personal declarations, IDs, all of that sort of stuff, that was not able to be migrated over. So we actually, when you come in to maintain that beneficial ownership record for the first time, that's what you would need to be uploading.
If you are already registered with the ROC, would the own if you already registered on the ROC, would you do you have to re-register for the BO?
So no. So you would not have to re-register for the BO if you're already an existing user. So right now there's one version of authority. So if you get authority, either individually or from us or with an organization, that authority gives you the ability to manage an entity. So authority is on an entity basis. There is a separate authority just for BO. So in order to manage an entity's beneficial ownership records, you would need the first level authority over the entity as well as the beneficial ownership authority. And then the beneficial ownership authority would also apply to being able to maintain any individuals or any relevant legal entities.
Thank you, George. So if an entity is already listed in the BMA register, will these same steps have to be followed, or is this only for registering a new entity?
So those steps are only for registering a new entity. So, like I said, the first time you come in, there will be gaps that you will have to complete within the relevant legal entity. But that relevant legal entity profile will be created, and you can start adding it to additional entities at that time.
Just for clarity, will there be a fee to change BOs?
No, no additional fees at this time for maintaining beneficial ownership, updating beneficial ownership. So any maintenance filings where you're actually maintaining an individual or RLE record, there will not be any fee, as well as any fees for maintaining beneficial ownership for a registered entity in Bermuda.
Will there be a demonstration if a trust is included in a relevant legal entity?
So this webinar was basically just an introduction to the system and to get people to basically show the people that are going to be using the system how to use it. In the third webinar, that one's going to be where we go into all the different nuanced situations. So we'll cover trust, nominee arrangements, joint arrangements, and all of those, and how you will satisfy those.
Will we be able to view the visualization of the org chart as a draft before the information has been submitted for vetting, or before the information has been submitted?
No, it won't. No, you won't be able to view it. That the visualizer only gets created once it's posted. But of course, as when you submit an application, at any point in time, the registrar of companies, we will be reviewing everything. And as part of the package with the org chart, we will make sure it lines up with everything beforehand before we approve it. If there's any inconsistencies or if something's out of place, then we would reach out to the applicant and basically get it in order before it's approved.
If the RLE is exempt from beneficial ownership filing, do they still need to go into the system and input the details of that exemption?
Yes. So I'll go and this will be one of the things that we go through in the third webinar. So basically we have to get up to the point of where that entity is exempted. So on the basis of a registered entity, if it's a registered entity and that entity is listed on the stock exchange, you can select that that entity is listed. If you select that it is a subsidiary of a company that's listed on a stock exchange, you will have to build the chain back to that subsidiary, and then that subsidiary will be the one that will be the link will show that is exempted.
And this is a question that seems to come across a few times. Is there a deadline for when the data comes over from the BMA that the CSPs or relevant legal entities have to ensure that the data that has been submitted from the BMA is up to date and correct? Is there a deadline per se? Yeah.
So right now, like I said, we're moving it over. Legislatively, the new legislation comes into effect basically when we take over. But the registrar of companies is working with, and we'll be working with the industry to get the stuff updated by June of next year. Before we and we won't be starting any enforcement actions until that point.
Is it worth making any changes on the Integra system now, or should the CSPs wait until we go live after November 3rd to make those changes? Is there any benefit to getting the data corrected now prior to the migration?
At this point in time, we're like the BMA is focused on any new applications coming through. So if you have any changes that should be filed, if it's beyond the deadline, if it's before the deadline, or if the deadline is before the end of the month to make those changes, then yes, they should go into Integra. But I would not bog the BMA down with processing any ones that do not need to be filed at this time. And to allow them to focus on clearing up any of the existing applications they have, or any urgent incorporations that are coming through around that at the end of the month.
What if an RLE is maintained by another CSP, but our managed entity has asked us to change the BA? Will we be able to get access to that RLE, and how will we be able to change it?
Yeah, so I'll be going through some changes to the authority model next week in the webinar next week. But basically, multiple CSPs or multiple organizations can have authority to manage a BO or a relevant legal entities profile.
George, another question that's come across a few times is personal declarations. Will we be accepting the BMA's personal declarations, a similar form of personal directions? And these personal directions are good for a period of time. Will we be also accepting that same period of time?
Yes. So we will be utilizing the BMA's personal declarations. So we're working with the BMA. We will be utilizing that as a joint personal declaration, so that it eases the burden of having to get multiple declarations for an individual, for an entity that might be regulated versus the beneficial ownership register, just ourselves. So basically, you'll be able to submit the same personal declaration to the BMA and to us. And also, yes, we are accepting the same timeline that the BMA that they are valid for.
Will historic PDF documents and letters submitted with the previous filings in Integra come over to the ROC's new system?
With our timeline, we were not able to bring over all of the PDFs. So that will be one of the things that will be that we will need you guys to the CSPs to enter in when they come into our system for the first time.
Will the industry be able to download registrations as a PDF? Their applications, their BO applications as a PDF, their submissions.
Oh, that was that was I'll go into that afterwards. So basically, when you create when you make a BO filing, it creates a filing in the entity's record. That filing is only available to persons with the authority. But basically, yes, you will be able to download the filings that are created for every one of your submissions.
And just a general question to reassure the industry, but has the ROC added any additional staff for this new process, as there are concerns that there may be some additional delays with the additional work being taken on by the ROC?
So, yep. So you're looking at some of the additional staff right now. We created the corporate authorization section. We have 4 senior analysts and 4 analysts in there. And that section will be focused on beneficial ownership and incorporations. So that is the entire focus for this section. So that's why as part of bringing this thing over, we're aiming for all applications processed within 24 hours, as long as the application is submitted, is complete and accurate.
All right, George, I think that's all the main questions we have right now. Any other questions will be handled at a later date, I believe.
Yep. So we're also going we will take any of the additional questions that we have, and we can provide them. We can provide additional responses as we go through. We're also going to utilize that to create a frequently asked questions page that we can so that you can access for any additional information. And also, along with the constitutional, like what I mentioned of the constitutional documents earlier, we'll be adding all of those documents up to our website so that everyone has access to them, along with the declarations, the personal declarations, and any other additional forms that you would need. Right. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this initial webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in the second one. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.